which I will remove and reveal to you. If you're faint of heart, you might want to look away, but I'm not there just yet. And action. I'm back from the Peloponnesian Wars. If you saw my last episode, you know I've been through a lot. If you didn't see my last episode and you're wondering what this is, your knitting friend over here has had skin cancer. Luckily, I'm going to be okay, but I have been through a couple of surgeries. This one just happened yesterday. Let me talk to you about knitting first before I get into the gory details of this. So the sweater I'm wearing, knitted by me in 1983. In the 80s, I had quit my corporate job and was working on my own. I needed some socialization. There was a wonderful yarn shop that's no more in my neighborhood that I used to go and hang out. And back then, this big bat sleeve, dolman sleeve was in fashion. And this was one of my first forays into color work. This is Angora. Small balls of it back in the 80s were $10. I mean, a little ball. I forget the name of the pattern, but I believe it was a French design. And it's knitted sideways. It's knitted from one wrist across the other to the other wrist. You can see the stitches are going sideways. And then the ribbing at the waistband is picked up and knitted downward. So still fits, lucky me, love it. It goes great with my ivory bangles, don't you think? And then could say a word about these earrings. There's a little story behind these earrings. You know that I'm into vintage jewelry. These are kind of like a Frida Kahlo style, made in Tasco, Mexico. When I was a college student, my family went to the Yucatan Peninsula and we visited Tasco on our way there, which is a silver mining town. So it's really famous for sterling silver jewelry. I had purchased a pair of earrings very much like this that were smaller, more appropriate for my size. Unfortunately, over the years, I lost one, was never able to replace it. So I finally broke down and bought a second pair. So you do know this about me, that I love to travel. And by the way, I will be going back to Scotland this fall and would love to take some of you with me. So I refer you to the episode I did on my visit to Scotland, so you can see the flavor of the kinds of places that we'll be going to. A lot of walking involved. Edinburgh has some hills, so if you want to join us, be a walker, okay? I'll put info in the show notes. While I was in Scotland, I purchased this yarn. It's called Croft, and it's made by Jameson and Smith for West Yorkshire spinners. It's 100% Shetland wool. And last episode, I showed you that I was knitting this sweater, knitting and designing this sweater for my son. Since I showed you that, I've changed the way in which I'm doing the cables. Initially, I thought I was going to have two columns of cables in one band, but I decided to put each column of cables in its own band, separated by a purl column. It might be better to see this on the back. You can see these vertical lines. They're cinched in wherever there's a twist of the cable. Without that, they would be a straight vertical line. So that's the flip side of the purl column. And it's motoring along. I have worked on it monogamously since I last saw you. This is the front. I've already reached the point where I'm decreasing for the raglan sleeves. And My methodology is I hook together a bunch of stitch markers, and as I decrease, I mark each row with a stitch marker so that when I go to do the flip side, this is the front, when I go to knit the back, I'll be able to track that I'm putting my decreases in the same place. I do a similar thing for my increases. I mark them so I can match up front to back. The reason I hook a bunch of them on is I already know that I need 14 decreases. So I started with 14 of these, and when I've hooked on the last one, I'll know that I've completed all the decreases. This little bonbon is my row counter. I don't like to keep it on the needle when I'm knitting with circulars, so I just have it on my cord and I slip it over when I reach that point. This has an 11 row repeat, so I just count to 11 on here and then reset it. And these turn. I have a bunch of these from my first iteration of knitting, which is decades ago. At the time that I was knitting sweaters back in the 80s, I acquired some small tools, small accessories. Another little tip and trick is, this is my skein. And I've mentioned to you in the past that I have a small Manhattan apartment. I don't have room for a ball winder and a Swift, nor do I want excess equipment. So instead of winding balls by hand, what I do is I just open up the skein and I unwind an amount, a good amount, to keep me busy for at least 4 or 5 rows. And then I just take this and I put a slip knot in it, so it's not going to get tangled, it's not going anywhere. And I work off of the yarn that I've unraveled. It's a system that works very well for me. So yeah, let's talk about the sleeves. I had been working on the sleeves last time I spoke with you. I've made a little bit more progress on them, but I put them on these holders because I needed the cable to do the front and the back. And the reason I'm doing the front and the back is yesterday when I went for this surgery, I wanted to have something with me that would keep me occupied for a good long while. The surgery I had is called Mohs, M-O-H-S. Anyone who's had skin cancer will be familiar with it. It can take several iterations, so you really don't know if you're going to be in and out in half an hour or if it's going to take you half a day. I've had it done before. My first surgery went pretty quickly. Yesterday, not so fast. Fortunately, I had cast on in the early morning before I headed out for the subway. While I was on my 25 minute subway ride uptown, I was able to start knitting my twisted rib, and I'd gotten a few rows in. And then, of course, I was in the waiting room and I knitted a little bit more. And then they did the first round of my surgery, and I had about an hour's wait until they got the lab results back. So I was knitting that whole time. The lab results unfortunately came back that the surgeon needed to go in and get a little bit more. And I had to wait for a room to open up. So that was another hour or so, more knitting, yay. Then when he was done, I had prearranged that I would be going to a plastic surgeon to stitch me up because I wasn't happy with how the first surgery was sutured. So I had to get into a taxi and go about a mile to another doctor's office. I wish I had taken pictures of these offices because one was more luxurious than the other, especially the plastic surgeon. Now, I had been there before for a consultation, so I knew how very posh this place is. So this is like 10 notches up from the first place, which was already clean and modern and beautiful. This was like, I felt like I was in Beverly Hills. And ironically, Carol Burnett was on the television screen in the waiting room, who's being feted for her 90th birthday. She didn't look a day over 70. So I said to him, she must have had some incredible plastic surgeon, huh? Well, it's not what I aspire to. You can see I'm not embarrassed to wear gray hair, and I won't be embarrassed to have more wrinkles as I age gracefully, I hope. That's my goal. Anyway, I had time to knit all of this. I was afraid if I brought the front of my sweater that I might have finished it and had nothing to work on. So I thought this was a better strategy to start new cast on of a new part and then just keep working. So, you know, every cloud has a silver lining. This was my silver lining. I hope you can all relate to that, that when you're having your very worst day, knitting can really bring you a lot of joy. Don't I sound more joyous than the last time I chatted with you? This has to come off today. I don't know if I should do like a big reveal. He did the stitches in a different way than the first surgeon for my other surgery. These are all underneath the skin, so I don't even know if I'm going to see anything. I have some bruising. This is not eyeshadow that you're seeing, and also still some swelling. I couldn't believe how my head felt yesterday. It felt like a block of wood. It had like no feeling. But I'm on the mend. Let this be a lesson. Anybody who's fair-skinned like I am, try and stay out of the sun. And especially if you're a young person, I know most of my audience is not under the age of 25, but if you're young, don't think that your skin is invincible. It can come back to bite you decades later. I haven't sat in the sun since I'm a teenager, but it's still caught up with me. So sunscreen, don't forget, and shade and hats and umbrellas. I walk on the shady side of the street if I have an option. Ah, yes. It's a lot of fun to walk in New York, and we don't own a car, so I do a lot of walking everywhere. In fact, I would have walked yesterday between these two doctors' offices, because a mile, it was really 9/10 of a mile on the taxi receipt. That's nothing for me, but I had a different bandage on, and they really want you to take it easy. So I thought, okay, I'll just splurge and hop in a taxi. Did I mention my bangle bracelets? I do like to chat with you about jewelry since I'm a huge jewelry lover. These two are ivory. I purchased both of these in Zimbabwe. This one I know was from a woman. I went to her home, and she also sold me these two carved busts, which I have cherished. Let me bring them a little closer to show you. Their earrings. I love that they have jewelry. Their earrings dangle. Yes, they have pride of place on my new desk. Did you notice that I am sitting in front of a family heirloom? You know, I've had all this tumult going on in my life. I talked about it in the last episode between the surgery and my in-laws and so on and so forth. I had a furniture delivery. It wasn't easy coordinating this because I had two different people in my family who almost at the same time decided that they were casting off family possessions. And there were two things that I have coveted for a long time. One of them, it's not hung yet. When I get it hung on my wall, I'll try and remember to show it to you. It's an Art Deco mirror that's shaped. It's in different sections. They're like petals of a flower and a stem. it's very unusual. It's not just one piece of mirror, it's individual parts that are hooked together. It's really special. Everybody in the family knew that I coveted this desk. Now, let me tell you, I didn't have room for this piece of furniture. I gave up a love seat to bring this piece in. But it's a really beautiful antique piece of furniture I'm thrilled to have. And if I sat on the other side, you wouldn't get to see it. So I'm sitting on the floor right now in this desk, which belonged to my step grandmother. So a cousin of mine took possession of it after the woman died. And she and her husband are empty nesters now. Their children have grown. They no longer need this large house that they had. And they called me and they said, we knew that you wanted this desk a while back. If you're still interested, we are planning to sell our home and we need to get rid of our furniture. Come and get it and it's yours. So I hired a mover as if I didn't have enough plates spinning in the air. I had to add one more. And this move took part in two segments. One before I left for Paris, one when I came back from Paris. It was really hard to coordinate getting both the things from different places and bringing them all to me. But I survived that ordeal and I have this lovely desk to show for it. The top is leather with gold embossing around the edge. It's very beautiful. And you can see that there's a glass top covering it. The shape of it, I'm not sure if you can tell from this, but you can see that there's a curve. It's a kidney shaped desk. It's very pretty. On the other side where I sit, there are drawers on both ends, and the middle drawer on each side has a filing cabinet inside. So it's really practical, really useful thing. I don't have a lot of furniture in the apartment that has storage in it. So this was a welcome find. And then it has this double layer of bookcase, which I have my books elsewhere, but I'm using this to display some special objects. You can see the Empire State Building, one of my favorite New York landmarks. But I also found the 50th wedding anniversary photo album of my grandparents. And let me just show them to you. Tilly and Sam, aren't they cute? She was wearing a golden gown. Whoops. And they had this beautiful, it was like a wedding cake for their 50th. These were my dad's parents who were immigrants to this country in the early part of the 20th century. Both of my mother's parents were born in the United States, born in my hometown, in fact, Philadelphia, where my mother also was born. So although I live in New York, I didn't start out here. Ironically, where I live is a stone's throw from where they lived when they were first married. They met here in New York on the Lower East Side. Over here, I have an Art Deco decanter and a set of shot glasses, which I received in a lovingly used condition from a friend of mine. These belong to her grandparents, but she knew that I loved deco and thought that I would enjoy having it, which I do. So I think that's about all I have to show you this time. I haven't made any progress on any of my other projects because I've been just consistently knitting on this sweater for my son with the cables. And I hope all of you are doing well. I hope you're all getting lots of joy out of your knitting. And should I do the big reveal? I'm a little bit afraid. Last time they shaved some of my hair off. They didn't do it this time. Okay, this is very, very dramatic. Woo, it's stuck to my hair. I might want to get a pair of scissors and cut. Ta-da. Oh, not bad. Whoa. Okay, I have to have a closer look in the mirror and I want to cut this off. But on that happy note, I will see you next time. Toodaloo. Let this be a warning to any of you who are fair-skinned like I am. Have a dermatologist check you from head to toe if you have anything that looks at all suspicious. I haven't had that head to toe checkup yet. It was my good fortune that they noticed these two things. Well, I've been keeping an eye on one for a while, but anyway, sunscreen, sunscreen, sunscreen. If you're a very young person, which I don't think I have too many in my audience, but if you're under the age of 25, please comment below and let me know. I think a lot of my audience is my generation. I hope I'm wrong because I'd love to be able to inspire newer, younger knitters. But nevertheless, if you're young and thinking that sunbathing is a cool thing to do, think again. This didn't hit me until many, many decades after I stopped sitting in the sun. These days, I'm usually with a hat, under an umbrella, in the shade. If I'm walking on the street, I'm always trying to cross over to the side of the street that's the shadier side. Yeah. Okay. These two ivory busts I purchased when I was in Africa in the 80s, along with some ivory bangles. This one, perhaps Bakelite, not certain, I haven't tested it. And these earrings, there's a little saga about these earrings. I had purchased a similar pair of earrings. These are kind of like the type that Frida Kahlo wore. When I was in college, in my early college years, my family went to the Yucatan Peninsula and we visited the silver mining town of Tasco, where they have a lot of jewelry designers and a lot of things made of sterling silver. I had purchased a slightly smaller pair of earrings similar to this, like very similar design with these little tassels dangling. But over the years, I lost one of them. And I looked on eBay to see if by some chance somebody might have just a single earring that would be the exact size as mine. But I never succeeded in finding one. So I went ahead and I treated myself to a complete pair. And unfortunately, they're larger. I really like the other ones better, but it just brings back memories of a wonderful trip that we had. So for those of you who are meeting me perhaps for the first time, yes, I love to travel and I have been on 5 continents. I would love to have you travel with me, and I will put information in the show notes about my upcoming trip to Scotland, September 2023. If you're interested in joining me, I'm going to be returning to many of the places that I showed in my Scotland video. That was the trip where I acquired this yarn. This yarn, Croft, by West Yorkshire Spinners. We'll be staying at the same hotel where I stayed last time. It's an affordable hotel, very well situated. Edinburgh is not a super large city, but it's packed with all kinds of fantastic museums and attractions. So I'd love to have you join me. It's so much fun to walk around the city. And yeah, if you are coming with me, be prepared to do a lot of walking. There are some hills, but it's really a city, like many cities, that's best appreciated by going off the beaten path and wandering around and finding all sorts of interesting architecture and sites.